Hi guys, welcome and welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are well and I hope you guys are staying safe. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make this summer dress. It's really chic and trendy, and I like the fact that it's inspired by a shirt dress. So as you can see, it has the bishop collar right there, and it also has the button wrap and button stand, although there are no buttons on it. Then I made it kind of like a skater dress, so it's like a shirt skater dress if there's anything like that, and it also becomes like high-low at the bottom at the hem, so it's high-low as well. So guys, it's a really nice and trendy piece. If you're looking to conceal your tummy or a baby bump, it works perfectly for that as well. If you haven't subscribed, guys, don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so you don't miss out on the awesome content that I have for you guys. To make your shirt inspired skater dress, you need the following items. You need your fabric scissors, and I've got mine right here. You'd also need your measuring tape. You need your pattern master, and you guys already know that this is my absolute favorite tool. If you're looking to shop this or any of the tools that I've mentioned, check out the links that I have in the description bar of this video and every other video to shop them. You'll need some pins. You need your tailor's chalk or fabric marker. You need your airstay, and this one is only about 12 inches long by about 2.5 inches or 3 inches, and I'll show you why you need that in a bit. And of course, you need your fabric. I've got 4 yards of Ankara fabric right here. Alright guys, as you can see, I'm working on paper right here, and that's because I actually worked on the fabric first, but I realized that it wasn't clear enough and you guys wouldn't be able to see, and because I don't want that, I decided to do whatever it is that I wanted to do on paper first. The first things first is, if you're using paper or you're using fabric, you need to cut out 2 strips of fabric, and each strip needs to be about 15 inches in length, and then the width can be as much as possible. So for me, I cut my Ankara on the length so that I could get the whole length of Ankara 45 inches. That's the length of Ankara. So I cut out 2 pieces of 45 inches in length by 15 inches in width. So basically I cut out 2 strips of fabric that are 15 inches by 45 inches. So now that I'm illustrating with paper, I've gone ahead to do the same thing. I've cut out 2 strips of paper and they are on fold already. After folding your paper into 2, ensure that you have one of it as the separated edges. As you can see, they're separated at the ends. If you need to hold it in place with pins, go ahead and do that. From the ends that are straight, you want to measure 3.5 inches in and just mark the points that you have. The reason why you're doing this is so that you can have the button wrap and the button stand, because this is a shirt inspired dress and this is actually the front piece. So normally the back piece is the one that is on like separated and the front piece unfold. However, when you're working with a shirt dress or a shirt, it's a different ball game. Connect the points and then label it as button stand. Then go ahead and place the second piece of paper so that the folded edge is against the new line that you've just made. Go ahead and pin it in place as shown. The folded piece of paper that was pinned onto the line is actually the center back in this case. Next, go ahead and draw your top line, and you guys know that the top line doesn't have a definite measurement, it's just as a guideline. So in this case, I went with the top line of 2.5 centimeters. After drawing your top line, the next thing to do is to find out your shoulder to bust point. Knowing your shoulder to bust point measurement only serves as a guide. My shoulder to bust point measurement is 11 inches, so I know that my armhole will be about 2 inches above that, which is at 9 inches. And then I decided that I wanted the top part of my dress to be only 10 inches long. I advise that you use 10 inches as the maximum and not longer. You can make it shorter if you want, but definitely not longer. So I went ahead to mark my shoulder to armhole measurement, which is 9 inches. And then I went ahead to mark out the desired length at 10 inches as shown. After marking out the armhole and desired length points, go ahead and square out as shown. On the top line, Mark half of the back or shoulder measurement plus half an inch sewing allowance. So in this case, my shoulder measurement is 15 inches. I marked half of that as 7.5 plus half inch allowance. So I marked 8. You want to repeat this on the armhole line as well, and then connect these points together with a vertical line as shown. To draw the perfect armhole, I always advise that you measure the vertical armhole line and then you find the midpoint of it and then add an extra half inch. So for instance, if you measure the vertical armhole line as 8 inches, 8 inches divided by 2 will give you 4, and then add an extra half inch to that, so it will be 4.5. So at 4.5, you want to go in by half an inch, and then you want to go ahead and use those guide points to draw in the armhole curve. After drawing the armhole curve, starting from the top line, mark 1 inch vertically on the armhole vertical line. Next, starting from the center back point, mark out the neck width, and the appropriate neck width ranges between 2.5 inches to 3 inches depending on your neck size. Afterwards, mark out the back neck depth, and the back neck depth is just 1 inch, and then mark out the front neck depth of about 3 inches on the line that you have the button stand. Get the shoulder slant, connect the neck width points to the 1 inch drop on the armhole line, and then go ahead and add the allowance of half an inch above the neck slant. You also want to add the allowance of half an inch to the end of the top bit. So basically, after you measure 10 inches for the length, you want to add half an inch allowance there and half an inch allowance to the neck slant, or the shoulder slant rather. On the armhole and desired length line, go ahead and mark 1/4 of the bust measurement plus half an inch for ease, and then 1 inch for the sewing allowance. So basically, whatever 1/4 of your bust measurement is, you'll be adding 1.5 inches. After doing that, go ahead and cut out the pattern as shown. It's important to mention that all allowances have been added to this pattern, and then when you're cutting out, you only want to cut out the back neckline. Do not cut out the front neckline yet. After cutting out the back neckline, go ahead and raise up the back piece, and then you want to redraw the front neckline. To redraw the front neckline, you want to make sure that the neck width is kept intact, so you don't want to increase the neck width. However, you want to draw the neckline so that it extends towards the button wrap as shown. After drawing the front neckline, go ahead and cut it out. At this point, you're done with the pattern, and this is what it looks like. So go ahead and use the pattern to cut out your main fabric by pinning it to it. You don't need to add any allowance because all allowances have been added to the pattern. Alright guys, for the purpose of those that didn't get it or didn't understand it, I'm going ahead to insert this clip again so that you can watch it in, fast action how I did that. So basically, I just repeated the exact same thing that I did on paper. I repeated it on fabric. However, like I said, I actually worked on the fabric first and decided to work on paper and insert the clip just so you guys can understand what I did. After cutting out the fabric pieces, You will instantly notice that the fabric pieces match perfectly with the paper pieces. Even though I didn't use any of them as a template, I cut them separately, but that's because I drafted it using the same measurement just to show you guys. So now that we have the back piece as well as the front pieces, the next thing for us to do is to iron on our stay onto the front piece. So you want to go ahead and mark the wrong side, and then you want to mark the button stand area. Starting from the edge of the button stand area, you want to go ahead and iron on the stay. After ironing the stay in place, the next thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and fold the button stand and button wrap in place, just like I've done here. However, in this case, I used an iron to press it in shape just so it holds. So the next thing you want to do is you want to fold it by folding in 1/2 inch and then folding it over by 1 inch. However, you must make sure that it gets to your 3.5 mark that you left earlier. After folding mine, you'll notice that it didn't get to the 3.5 mark that I left. So what I decided to do was, instead of folding in 1/2 inch, I decided to fold in about 3/4 inch first and then fold in 1 inch as shown. After doing that, it got to the 3.5 mark, and then I went ahead to top stitch it in place. After top stitching the button stand of both front pieces, go ahead and place the stand area on each other so that they overlap as if it's been buttoned up, and then you want to lay it so that the right side is facing the top or facing up. Go ahead and place the back piece on it so that the right sides of both pieces are facing each other, and then you want to go ahead and sew the shoulders together on 1/2 inch sewing allowance and then the side on 1 inch sewing allowance. After sewing the shoulders and the sides, I gave it a good iron, and this is what it looks like. So the next thing for us to do is to attach the bottom part onto the dress. But before we get to that, we're going to go ahead and notch the center of the dress of the top. To notch the center of the top, you want to go ahead and fold it into 2 and then just create a notch at the exact center of the back. After notching the center of the back, go ahead and pin the button stand on each other as it should be, and then go ahead and take the circumference measurement of the top bit. You can either take the circumference measurement by measuring around just like I'm doing, knowing your starting point and then measuring until you get there as the end point, or you can lay it flat and then take the measurement. However, it's important to mention that the measurement you take when you go around is usually more accurate than that you take when it's flat like this. Next, you'll need to calculate the fabric required for the gathers. After measuring the circumference, go ahead and multiply that by 2 if you want medium fullness. However, if you want it very full, you can multiply by that 3 and cut out a fabric with that dimension. At this point, it's not uncommon for people to use up all the fabric for the gathers and forget about the sleeves. So I always encourage that you remove your fabric that you need for your sleeves, and I encourage that you remove about 3/4 yard to 1 yard for the sleeves, depending on how full you want the sleeves to be. After taking out whatever fabric you need for the sleeves, go ahead and fold the remaining fabric into a manageable size so that it's easier for you to cut out the length that you require. Using the formula explained on the screen, cut out the remaining dress length that you need. So for instance, if your total dress length is 38 inches and you've cut out 10 inches like me for the top, you will need to cut out 28 inches as the remaining dress length. So go ahead and cut out the remaining dress length depending on how long or how short you want your dress to be. After cutting out the remaining dress length, go ahead and open it up and then notch the center. Now remember that depending on the fullness that you chose to have, your width would vary or the width will vary. In this case, I used ×2 of the circumference that I measured earlier. However, if you want yours fuller, you can go for ×3, but I was very happy with the result that I got. Mark the wrong side and then make sure your sewing machine is set on the gather stitch and sew from one end to the other end while the sewing machine is on the gather stitch. After sewing the gathers all through, here is what it looks like. Go ahead and pull on the thread from the bobbin, making sure you pull your gathers firmly but gently. Pull towards the center of the notch that you made and pull from both ends. After gathering the whole fabric, here's what it looks like. Go ahead and locate the right side of the fabric and the wrong side, and if you're like me, you'd have put a mark on the wrong side, so I always just put an X on the wrong side so that it's easy for me to identify. Pin the center of the button stand of the top part. So basically, remember that we have pinned the button stand on each other. You want to find the center and then you want to pin that to the notch on the gathered bit. You also want to pin the end of the gathered piece to the notch on the center back of the bodice piece. Now you want to make sure that you don't pin exactly at the edge, but you leave about ½ inch at the edge of the gathers and you pin that part to this notch on the bodice piece, just like I'm showing you right now. While pinning the gathered piece to the bodice or the top part, you want to make sure that the right sides of both fabrics are facing each other. Ensure that the gathers is evenly distributed, and if you need to move it around just like I'm doing. So you want to make sure that you're starting at the place where you have the button wrap or the button stand, and you want to make sure that you're ending about 1½ inches away from the notch at the back of the bodice piece. So again, you don't want to sew to the notch at the back of the bodice piece. You want to stop about 1½ inches away from the notch. After adjusting the gathers on this side and you're happy with it, ensure to repeat on the other side and then go ahead and sew it in place by sewing it on ½ inch sewing allowance and making sure that your sewing machine stitches have been tightened or are back to normal. After sewing, here's what it looks like, and you will instantly notice that I didn't sew the end of the gathered piece like I said earlier. You shouldn't sew it to the end. So here is what it looks like. So now the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be closing this gathered piece, and the reason why I said we shouldn't sew it is so that it's convenient for us to close. To close the gathered piece, you want to hold it together, still the right sides are facing each other, and you want to sew it on ½ inch sewing allowance starting from the top to the bottom. After sewing and overlocking, here's what it looks like. So the next thing to do is to go ahead and sew the gathers close. So you want to go ahead and lay that flat if it lays flat. If you need to go do a pleat, go ahead and do a pleat and then just sew it in place and lock your stitches. After doing that, this is what it looks like, and at this point we are nearly finished. The next thing to do is to sort out the collar. So whether you want a bishop collar or Mandarin collar as it's called, or you want a regular collar, you can go ahead and do that. And if you don't know how to draft your collar pattern and sew the collar, go ahead and watch out the tutorial that I've linked in iCards above. I've put the picture on the screen. Go ahead and watch the tutorial. It's a detailed tutorial showing you how to cut and sew a collar. So guys, at this point I've gone ahead to add my collar, and that's what it looks like. Measure out the armhole in preparation for the sleeves, and again, if you don't know how to cut and sew sleeves, I've got a detailed tutorial showing you how to cut and sew a basic sleeve. So I'll put a link in the iCards above as well as in the description bar below so you can check it out. So at this point, you want to reach for the fabric that we kept earlier for the sleeves. Remember I told you to keep about 3/4 yard or a whole yard, so I kept about 3/4 yard, and I've gone ahead to fold it into 2 on the length and then fold it over. So I've folded it a total of 4 times, and this is because I'm going to be cutting out both sleeves at the same time. Starting from the folded edge, go ahead and measure horizontally the armhole measurement that you took earlier on the bodice or on the dress. However, because I want this to have some gathers around the shoulders, I decided to add an extra 2 inches to the armhole measurement that I took. So for instance, if the armhole measurement that you took is 10 inches, you'll be marking 12 inches as opposed to 10 inches. At the edge where the armhole measurement stops, go ahead and measure 5 inches vertically. After doing that, you want to go ahead and draw in the S-shaped armhole curve, making sure to leave it flat and straight at the beginning where you have the folded edge, just like I've done. Then go ahead and measure the armhole measurement plus 2 inches all the way down. So again, if you measured 12 earlier, you'll measure 12 vertically all the way through the length of the fabric, and then go ahead and cut out the desired length. However, for this style of sleeve, you want to make sure that your desired length, you add about an extra 2 to 3 inches to your desired length and cut out the sleeve. So this sleeve is not fitted, it's just a straight sleeve, and that's because we're going to add a band to the end. After marking out and cutting out the sleeves, go ahead and create a notch at the center of the sleeve crown and at the center of the hem as shown. As mentioned earlier, this style of sleeves require a band. To determine the amount of fabric that you require for the band, you want to go ahead and use the formula on the screen. So you want to find the wrist circumference that you should measure on yourself. And if you don't know how to measure your wrist circumference, check out the video that I have linked in the icons above and in the description bar below on how to measure your wrist or how to measure your human body. Using the formula on the screen, my wrist is about 8.5 inches, so I go ahead and add 2 inches to that, so I know that the desired length that I require is 10.5 inches. However, in terms of the width or how wide I want the fabric, I know that I want it as 2.5 inches, so multiplied by 2 will give me 5 inches plus an extra 1 will give me 6 inches. I'll be cutting out 6 inches by 10.5 inches. After cutting out 2 pieces of the desired dimensions for the wrist fabric, go ahead and notch the center of both pieces as shown. To sew the band onto the sleeves, you want to locate the wrong side of the sleeve and then you want to locate the wrong side of the band. Pin the band to the sleeve so that the right side of the band is against the wrong side of the sleeve and the notch area are matching each other. So as you can see, I've pinned the notch area of both pieces together. Starting at the edge, you want to go ahead and pin the sleeve to the edge of the band, making sure you pin it in to about 1.5 inches. This 1.5 inches would not have any pleats or gathers. Then go ahead and form your pleats so that it's evenly distributed, starting from the 1.5 inches at the edge up onto the notched area. Then you want to go ahead and do it from the notched area up onto the other edge, making sure to leave 1.5 inches at the edge without any pleats or any gathers as well. After pinning the pleats in place, this is what it should look like. So the next thing to do is to go ahead and sew it on 1/2 inch, starting from one edge to the other edge. After sewing in the pleats on the sleeve, here's what it looks like. So the next thing to do is to top stitch it over so that we can close that area, and it looks like this. So I've gone ahead to do it for the second one, and I'm going to show you just how to do it for this particular one. So the first thing you want to do is you want to fold in 1/2 inch, and then you want it folded over to the right side and then pin it in place. After folding the band over and pinning it in place, here's what it looks like. So go ahead and top stitch it in place, and at the end of the day, this is what it should look like after being neatly top stitched in place. Fold each sleeve into two so that the right sides are facing each other, and then go ahead and pin it in place. Ensure that it is well pinned and it aligns, and then go ahead and mark out the sewing allowance of 1 inch, and then go ahead and sew it in place. After sewing each sleeve on 1 inch sewing allowance, here's what it looks like. Go ahead and overlock it, and as you can see, I trimmed off 1/2 inch while overlocking just to remove the bulk. So the next thing to do is to attach the sleeve onto the bodice or onto the dress, and this is what it will look like on you. To fix the sleeves to the dress, go ahead and locate the side seam on the dress and the side seam on the sleeves. You want to pin this in place after making sure the side seam match. You also want to locate the shoulder joining on the dress and then the sleeve crown notch that you made or that we made on the sleeve. You want to pin that together as well. Then you want to go ahead and pin the sleeve onto the dress so that it's evenly distributed. You want to make sure that all the excess is towards the sleeve crown around the center so that you can put some pleats in place where necessary. To avoid any issues, it's best to start pinning from the side seam area and to work your way upwards in both directions. That way, whatever excess that you have will be left towards the sleeve crown area, and then you can go ahead and pleat it in place. After pinning the sleeves in place, here's what it looks like. Go ahead and sew it all around on a 1/2 inch sewing allowance. After sewing, I went ahead to overlock it, and I went ahead to repeat this on the other side as well. At this point, the dress is nearly finished with just the hem left to sort out. I decided to make it a high-low dress, so what I decided to do is, starting from the hem, I decided to fold the fabric into two so that I have the part where I have the joining on the gathers on one side and then the center front on the other side. After laying the gathers flat and locating the center front and center back, I went ahead to draw in an S-shaped curve, making sure to make it go higher around the center front. At the center front, I marked about 5 inches, which is how high I wanted it to go, and then I went ahead to use my chalk to mark a lazy slant or a lazy S-shaped curve. After doing that, I went ahead to cut it out as shown, making sure that I do not cut it out or I do not reduce it at the back. After cutting out the hem, go ahead and hem it by folding in 1/2 inch twice. Afterwards, you're done with your dress, and as you can see, the front is evidently shorter than the back. Alright guys, so we've come to the very end of this tutorial. Thank you so much for staying to the very end. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope it was worth your while. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to leave your comments, suggestions and feedback in the comment section below. If you've not invited a friend to the channel, please invite them, ask them to subscribe and tell them how much they will love this channel. Thank you guys for staying with me, and I'll see you in my next video next Sunday. Till then, stay safe.